Ois Beis, the Rebbe goes into explaining a beer explanation to the two questions we mentioned in Ois Aleph: who chooses who first? Is it the Yidden choosing the Eivshter? Is it the Eivshter choosing us? And what caused this idea of Asher, the Karban, the idea of Bechira? Here in Ois Beis, the Rebbe brings down the marshal. For the marshal, the Rebbe says the pasuk of the idea of Chelka Avayim Ranavshi, my soul, part of my soul calls out. Chelka Avaya Amra Nafshi, my soul wants, cleaves, chooses Eibshter. My soul calls out God. Now the Rebbe brings the marshal, the Medrash, the king, which comes into into a city. Now this king comes into the city with all of his great people. Doesn't come alone. He comes with a bunch of special high officials. Now you have people over there that they start coming close to the board of boardness. This guy comes close to the board of education, the board of military, and I don't know what, all the other things. They try to come close. There's one person that says, I want to be close to the king. Smart guy, the wise man. Now, that's the marshal. The Rebbe says the same thing is with the Yidden and the Shadow Masaylam, all other nations. All the other nations serve the sun, the moon, the stars, all the other creations that are out there. The Yid, the smart guy, the wise guy says, I want to be connected to God, King. And why? Because the king doesn't change, and all other creations, the sun, the moon, the stars, the mazalis, they all change. God doesn't change, and that's why. And then he continues and he says this idea of Chelka Avayim Ranavshi, my soul calls out God. That's the marshal, the parable, and that's the explanation with the nations and the Yidden. Now, we need to understand this idea. You need to be smart to choose the king. And you have to give me this reason that because the king doesn't change, and the other species, the other creations do change. Even a small child, someone that's not so smart, knows king is great, king is big, king is the king for who he is. You choose the king because he's the king. Now, even if you want to tell me that the other creations, the sun, the moon, the stars will not change, I would still pick the king. Why? Because we know that the king, as a king who he is, he brings down the Shichma Yolamayla Gavoy Mekolam. He's a head taller than the nation. Now, to understand this idea that he's a head taller, what does it mean? Where my head finishes, my head's over here, so his shoulder is right here. The idea here is that I have my seichel, my thoughts, my intellect, whatever I know, whatever it is, comes down. I have my midas, my feelings, the way I act, my heart. Now, however high I am in my head, my intellect, my seichel, whatever I can think, whatever I can accomplish, by the king, he's above it. He's above even all the Sadim, all the special, and all the people that are included in his high officials and everything. They're part of this. At the end of the day, they're part of the people that are under him. Where my brain will reach the highest, however high I will become, by a king, will get maybe to the height of his midas. His head is higher than everybody else. His seichel is greater than everybody else. That's what a king is. He's higher than the nation. See, even if everybody else doesn't change. You pick the king because the king is who he is. He's greater than everybody else. So why do you need this idea of being smart to choose the king? That would be, in short, that would be the idea of Eis Aleph, Eis Beis. To keep it short and simple, the idea of Eis Beis, there's the marshal, king, the sudden, people coming into the city, and you have different people choosing different people that have connections in the universe. Same thing is with the other nations. They want to choose the sun, the moon, the stars, and other things, and they choose the Eibishter. Why? Because his soul calls out, I want God, and God doesn't change. Now, even if the other species and deities and all the other stuff don't change, nevertheless, the king is the king. He's greater than everything else. So why does it need to be this idea of mischalef? Not mischalef. He changes, he doesn't change. You pick the king. Why do you need to be smart? You pick the king because the king is the king. He is who he is. That's, in short, that would be Eis Beis.